So hi everybody, I'm Tania. I am Brazilian, but I came to live in the UK about 34 years ago, and I I wasn't a spiritist as such, meaning I wasn't someone who participated in spiritist meetings. I had been many times to spiritist centers in Brazil, but my history with Spiritism was only at its early stages, coming from a Catholic family. I was brought up as a Catholic, went through most of the Catholic rituals, etc. And I came to the UK when I was quite young, so I wasn't completely independent from my family in terms of ideology when I moved to the UK, and I found my independence here. So it's interesting that I have been asked to give this presentation because I was thinking back and I don't have the same lived experience of spiritual centers in Brazil or spiritism in Brazil as maybe some of you have. But I think my lived experience of being a Brazilian in the UK and being quite involved with Spiritism before in London with Janet Duncan and the Allan Kardec study group. And I experienced many phases of the Spiritist movement in the UK. So it was, for me, it is quite more or less like a trip down memory lane in terms of giving this presentation and drawing those parallels between Spiritism in Brazil and Spiritism in Europe, with a focus on how, let me share my screen because then you see what presentation. So how can Spiritism contribute to the treatment of mental health disorders? I think this is a very important topic because nowadays we understand that a lot of people suffer from mental health disorders or imbalances, I would say. We all fluctuate, our mental health fluctuates all the time, and sometimes we veer towards extremes, and that creates problems. So everybody at some point in our lives will experience some degree of mental health imbalances or frailties. And we will know people for whom this is something a bit more extreme. But I was asked to talk about the Spiritist centers in Brazil and how we can, because in Brazil, Spiritism seems to be quite advanced. What we hear is very positive, is very reassuring, and we know that Spiritists and Spiritist organizations have a very important role in Brazilian society in terms of providing support and assistance for people in need. And there are Spiritist hospitals that treat mental health disorders in a very different way than traditional hospitals may do, because as the Spiritists, we accept the reality of eternal life. We accept the fact that we have a history before we incarnate in this planet. We come here to learn and to pay debts and to progress spiritually. And to progress spiritually, we need to be tested. If we are not challenged, then we stay stuck. And unfortunately, some of the challenges can be quite painful, and that can create disturbances if they were not there already. So what I'm going to do is, I don't know how to do that. Yeah, it's moved. I'm going to just talk a little bit about the structure of the traditional Spiritist center in Brazil. And I think this is where we start running into trouble. So in Brazil, the Spiritist center is set up. The whole philosophy around the Spiritist center is to create an environment where that organization can be a school where people can go and learn the theoretical aspects of the Spiritist teachings through talks, courses, seminars, the moral teachings for children and youth groups are very popular as well. And every time I go to Brazil, I visit a Spiritist center when I can with my sister-in-law, who is now a Spiritist, but she's not involved with the political or administrative aspect of the Spiritist Center. So she goes as a participant. And it's interesting because here in the UK, I facilitate groups within my work. And there is a big difference between people who are involved in the administration, the running, the facilitating of groups and participants. And often we say that someone comes into treatment, they receive some treatment, and when they are stable, a lot of the times they want to engage in what we call recovery programs, so to work towards long-term recovery. And some of those who are in recovery, who have been in recovery for a period of time, they will want to become more involved and volunteer, contribute. But there is a time for that, in the sense that people need to be emotionally stable enough to be able to make a positive contribution. Otherwise, they can risk a relapse. And I was thinking about the parallel of Spiritist centers and those activities with what I experienced within the NHS, the healthcare system in the UK. And there are some parallels because a lot of people attend Spiritist centers in Brazil just the same way that I used to go to church or still go to church. They go every week, they listen to a talk, they say a few prayers, they have healing, as some people in the Catholic Church would have the Holy Communion. They go home and nothing much changes. The following week, they go to the Spirit Center, they listen to a talk, they say a few prayers, they have healing, they go home, and it continues. Sometimes for years, years and years. And some people never move in one incarnation, they never move away from that. But at least the Spiritist Center is offering that opportunity for them to keep going back, listening to the same thing, learning a bit more every time, and gradually increase their resilience, their ability to understand more of how to then apply that at home or in their communities. So in that respect, the Spirit Center in Brazil is very much also a temple. The word usually used in Portuguese would be translated as a church, perhaps. I chose a temple for two reasons. First of all, because that expresses better what a Spiritist Center in Brazil is. And also because the word church creates all kinds of resistance in Europe. And I will talk a little bit more about that later on. But temple is a good expression of what the Spiritist Center is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a place that provides spiritual assistance. And not only spiritual, but practical, energetic assistance through fluidotherapy or healing, irradiations, praying together, we know is very important in terms of creating a powerful energy that can be irradiated out and used by healing spirits, even in great distances from where it's being generated, to help others, spirits and incarnates, to improve. And if we are dealing with people, if we know of people, like we have the healing book, for example, and we write down the names of the people that we want to receive assistance, and praying together rather than praying at home by myself, together with other people, creates much more power in terms of the healing energies. And the Spiritist Centers that focus, that brings those people together to pray together, to create those potential healing energies, as well as it offers the opportunity for mediumship development and work in the sense of putting that ability into good use, into useful activity. The same way that someone with a musical ability wants to share that ability with other people. When mediums are able to share that ability with other people through the works that Spiritism or Spiritist Center offers, it can be very good for the medium, but it can be good for a lot of other people as well, and especially for some spirits during the work of rescue work or assistance to spirits, but also it provides a safe place for mediums to interact with the information and learn that what they are going through is not necessarily a mental imbalance, but it's an ability that needs to be managed in a healthy way, and how to manage that ability. Because unfortunately, a lot of the mental health disturbances that we see, as we know, if it's not created, if it's not the direct cause of imbalanced mediumship, it can be used by spirits to create more imbalance. So the Spiritist Center in Brazil offers a wealth of opportunities for mediums to learn, to work, to balance themselves. And in that respect, it's a workplace where people, either ostensibly mediums or not, but everybody can get involved and feel useful. So it offers a focus point, it's the nuclei of the Spiritist movement. And it provides opportunities for almost anyone that walks through the doors. Either someone who just wants to listen to the talks, have healing, go home, or someone who wants to really learn about their mediumship and work and become a functioning medium within the mediumship meetings, or well-meaning people who don't necessarily have any mediumnimic abilities, but want to contribute to the community. And this is where we run into trouble in Europe, because we look at the history of Brazil, the success story that we hear from Brazil, and we think, how can we implement that here? And why do we find it so difficult to implement that here? It may be we have to really look at some of the historical aspects. First of all, Brazil is relatively a young country. It doesn't carry the same baggage that some European countries do in terms of religion. Everybody talks about God and about angels and about spirits in Brazil, no matter who they are. Brazil doesn't have a huge history of religious conflict. So when we're talking about spirituality, in Brazil, we don't meet with the same kind of resistance that we meet here, especially within mainstream hospitals, other organizations, health care places, or even individuals. Even while preparing this talk in the communications that we've had, I had to sometimes think very careful about what words I was going to use. Because if you use certain words, you immediately, I could see the brick walls being built in front of me in terms of accepting certain vocabularies that in Brazil and Brazilians in Europe, we use those vocabularies without realizing, we use those words without realizing that the person hearing it may not be receiving it in the same way that another Brazilian may. So it's important to think that when we talk about Europe, for example, and living in the UK, going through the Brexit process, it's being hammered into everybody's mind here that Europe is not a homogeneous entity, but it's a patchwork of cultures, of histories, of languages, of individuals with individual needs and characteristics. So we need to remember, and even in a country like Brazil, that you may look from outside and think, oh, that Spiritism is this amazing thing and everything works, because it is a little bit like, what can I say, when you're telling a story and you're just showing when you're advertising a product and you only show the good thing about the product and you don't tell all the bad things that could happen. I remember there was a washing powder in the UK a few years ago that they were fined by the advertising agencies because it said, this washing powder removes 99% of the stains. It left out the fact that it removes 99% of the stains because it removes quite a lot of the fabric in which the stain is attached to, leaving little holes in your clothes. So we don't get to hear about the struggles that many spiritist centers and Spiritism in Brazil still faces. But also, I want to bring, I'm preparing for this. I don't know if you can see this. It's called The Greatest Spiritists of Brazil. It's quite an old book, and it's fallen into pieces, and I was flicking through it. Two things came to mind. First of all, that Brazilian Spiritism is contemporary to Kardec's Spiritism. Spiritism there started with more or less with Kardec and continued, whereas in Europe, most countries in Europe, Spiritism started with Kardec, stopped for quite a long period of time, and has only relatively, historically speaking, restarted. So whereas Brazil continued improving and developing for more than 100 years, our history of Spiritism here, our history in England is barely 40 years old, which in human history is not really that much. Let me have a look. So when you think about that, the other thing that became really clear about, and this stops about 50 years ago. I don't even know if the more contemporary spiritists are listed here. Not even Francisco Xavier or Divaldo Franco are listed here. So these are really old, mostly dead spiritists. However, the one thing that is the norm for more or less every single one of them, and that takes me back to Jesus, in fact, is that similar to Jesus, those spiritists that built up what Spiritism now in Brazil is, they didn't try to sell Spiritism to the mainstream. They kind of worked on the fringes of society, and they built their own schools, their own orphanages, their own clinics, their own homes for the elderly. And I remember growing up, and the city where I was born, in Marília, there is a Spiritist hospital. So there is a famous Spiritist center and a Spiritist hospital. And only very recently, I started hearing of Spiritist hospitals or organizations, health organizations started and led by Spiritists and working within the Spiritist framework, began to receive funding from the central government. Most of all, it was from individuals, the community pulling together to provide that assistance. So when we are thinking about how can we, sometimes, it might feel that we ask ourselves, what are we doing wrong here? Because Spiritism seems to be growing so much in certain places, and in my little town, it's not, and I'm struggling so much. Spiritism has always, in Brazil especially, followed Jesus' approach of staying local, providing what the local community needs. If there are lots of street kids living on the streets, then it would be an orphanage or a school. If there was a lot of elderly people in need of assistance, it would be a home for the elderly. Food, clothes, basic things. And as part of that, Spiritist teachings, meetings for irradiation, other things as well. But the big focus of Spiritist groups in Brazil are entities to support the local community. So becoming a focus of attention in that respect. And because the Spiritism wasn't trying to sell a different religion as such to everybody, because it never demanded that people became Spiritists when they went there. They kind of stayed under the radar of the main religions in Brazil, and even under the radar of certain political organizations that could have, because basically if there is if I am the mayor of a city and there is an organization that's doing my job by providing schools, hospitals to the community, and I don't have to spend money from the central government, I can use money to pave the roads or fix a bridge, then why would I be against it? So by doing that, it kind of overcame a lot of the resistance that would have come its way from religious organizations and also political entities. And it was filling gaps within that structure. So Spiritism in Brazil, many of the Spiritist centers fill the gaps within the local community that are not being met by the traditional religions or by the central government. So how can our knowledge of Spiritism here where we are help us to help our community? And this is not a question I can answer for everybody. I can share what I have done. I can share some of my experiences, but I think what we need to think about, I remember when I was in London still, when we had an event and there was quite a lot of food left, sandwiches, good sandwiches, very tasty ones. Me and a friend of mine who has recently returned to Spirit, we filled the bag and we said, let's go to Trafalgar Square, which is a central area in London. And I knew that was an area where a lot of homeless people congregated in the night. And let's go and distribute this food, because guess what? That's what we would do in Brazil. And about 3 or 4 people were very thankful for the sandwiches. One person we offered wanted a very specific type of sandwich that we didn't have and got a bit cross that we didn't have exactly the flavor that he liked. And then I started to talk to someone else, and a police officer came by and said, don't worry about this, because we are taking them to a shelter, so they'll be fed there. And I went home that night thinking about how different that experience I just had was compared to the experience I had previously in Brazil, where people would be queuing up to get one of those sandwiches, and we wouldn't have had enough for everybody who wanted one. And most of all, they wouldn't care what flavor it was, what the feeling was. They would just be glad that they would be eating that day. And this is something that I've always mentioned to people I worked with within our Spiritist groups, either in London or here in Sheffield. The needs of the people we deal with here is very different, to a great extent, to the needs of the people that we meet in countries like Brazil. The good thing is, in my experience as a mental health worker, the Sheffield Trust is very open about spirituality. The mainstream medicine is beginning to realize that whether the doctors, nurses, health workers believe it or not, their patients' belief matter and influences the outcome of their treatment, be that treatment for cancer or mental health. So they encourage workers to have that conversation, to ask, to find out. And this is changing. And it's changing because we realize more and more now how powerful our minds is. And even if you are talking purely from the biological perspective, we know now that our thoughts influence our biology. And if we can improve the quality of our thoughts, the thoughts of our patients, then we can improve the outcome of the treatment. And this is something that Spiritism have known for a very long time. And in Brazil, it's applied a lot. Like in Spiritist hospitals in Brazil, often they take a holistic approach, whereby to treat the patient, we need to treat the whole family. And this is something that's beginning, this kind of language is beginning to be used here in the UK, at least. And I stress the UK because I don't have personal experience of other countries. So I'm looking forward to the next part of the meeting to hear what you guys have to say. But when we treat in the treatment of people with substance misuse problems, we know that if we only treat the individual and then send them back to the same environment that often created the problem, we just set them out to failure. Ideally, we want to bring the family with the individuals, but there is a lot of resistance to that. And this is something that we know for other mental health conditions, especially disturbed mediumship. If you just treat that individual, you need to treat the group, and not just the incarnates, but the discarnates as well. And this is something that Spiritists can add to the conversation, being slightly careful how we use vocabulary. However, there's plenty of words that we can use that says exactly what we need to say, but doesn't raise anybody's back against the wall. And then they become more amenable to hearing what we have to say. Like I've said before, if I say, I'll pray for you, the person may object to that. But if I say, I'm thinking of you and I'll be sending you some positive vibes, everybody likes it and they can accept it. So there are ways we can improve on that. I'll just finish by mentioning a couple of examples. Arlindo is someone that I know around here in the north, and he had an operation of about a year ago or so. And when I went to visit him in hospital, he said that the surgeon asked if he minded if they prayed together. So nowadays, when you go anywhere, you fill in forms and you can say which religion you embrace or not. But I don't think in this case it really mattered very much. What caught my attention was that Arlindo was very, very glad that the doctor wanted to pray. He is a man of faith as well. But I was really pleased to hear how much more comfortable doctors in a traditional setting are becoming to embrace their own religion and to take their beliefs to work with them, and to openly share that with their patients. So I think that there's hope there. And more and more examples like this are coming up. And I'm not going to do anything about my own experiences because I've shared enough of that already. And I'm sure there will be more opportunity. I'm mindful of the time as well. So I think I'm going to stop now and complement through the discussions. If there's something else that I can add to, then I'll do that via the general discussions.
Okay, Tania, thank you for very interesting and clarifying talk and good point of view from different, let's say, cultural backgrounds from Brazil and in Britain. I would like to know if there is somebody questions.
Before we go to the questions, can I just add something? Excuse me. One thing that I forgot to mention that in my experience makes for a big difference between the Brazilian experience and ours here is the number of people involved. You go to any Spiritist center in Brazil and there are loads and loads of volunteers. They're open all day long. and they have a lot of people to help out. In the UK, we don't have that. Here in Sheffield, it's been the same 3 people for the past 20 years. And it's been really hard to encourage people to become a bit more active. And I think that that makes a big difference. I know that in other groups, some of you have a different experience from mine, but I think the numbers also count in this respect.
Yeah, may I maybe start with the first comment and question? First of all, thanks a lot, Tania, for this very, very interesting points you brought up, and this comparison also between the Brazilian way and where we are, where you see the UK and where we are in Europe. When I asked you to do the speech, and when we thought about this topic, at least I tried to find some answers for the situation we have here in Munich, right? We have a relatively small group here, maybe 15, 20 people in our society here in Munich. And well, 4 or 5 of us, we are very interested in this mental disease topic, and we understand how we can help or what we could do, and we see and learn from the Brazilians what is possible to do, how to, let's say, complement the traditional medical treatment with the spiritual help. And well, certainly, I mean, we at the moment, at least so far, the way we try to apply this is maybe the academic way. I don't know. We started studying and trying to understand what are the mechanisms on the spiritual way. What is the, let's say, the spiritual treatment in addition to the medical treatment? And then the question is now, how can we reach out to the medical community, to the psychiatrists and so on, and how can we work together? And this probably doesn't work at all because, this community is not open and not waiting for us, and they are completely shying away. And what you are suggesting now is really do it the way, like, let's say, Jesus did and the initial followers did, like really helping the people in need. And the Spiritism comes with it automatically because we are Spiritists and we believe in what we do, and the way we would automatically then sort of convey also the message, if you like. And if then you have people with disabilities, then we would apply what we can do. Maybe that is really the way we need to go. I don't know. And what I would really like to understand is what is his experience in other countries. I mean, we have so many nations or people from different nations. So what are your experiences? How do you think? How can we, let's say, apply the spiritual treatment we can do? We know the positive effects, and we know there are so many people in needs, but yet we don't know how to bring the power to the streets, if you know what I mean.
One of the difficulties that I find in the UK is the fear to dare. And because I suppose a lot of it comes from the fact that most of the people leading Spiritist groups in the UK are foreigners. We're not born here. So we might not have a full understanding of the laws. There is the fact that we use a vocabulary that often is not as culturally appropriate. But even healing, the normal laying on of hands, we don't, in Brazil, every single group will have healing sessions where people just go and for the initial prayer, a very short talk, and they go to receive healing. Here, we never had that, not in my experience. I'm sure there are many more groups in the UK now that I'm not as familiar with, but to the extent that Brazil provided, starting really with that, what does my local community need? How can I assist? Because people usually come to Spiritist centers when they are desperate, when they tried everything else. And I think the advantage we have over the history in other places in Brazil is that we are better at working with the medical community. So if someone is in treatment, I think a lot of people that lead Spiritist groups at the moment have a better understanding of medication, of the type of treatments that they might be receiving, to work with that rather than either you come here or you go there. So I think in that respect, we have already started making those links, but the main route will be through the people who need, through our communities.
Okay. Any more comments, questions?
I'd like to hear if anyone has experiences in other countries or cities in which they were able to.
I can tell one example in Finland. We were having event with Medical Spiritist Association in Finland, and we got in this event participants. There were some Finnish doctors, medical doctors, and we were having roundtable discussion there, and they told to us that please don't take pictures or mention their names, because if they are participating some kind of Spiritist event, it could be very bad for their professional reputation, I would say. So that's the one challenge what we have seen. Now I'm trying to help one family. There is father and mother and two, let's say, teenagers, girls. Both of them, they tried suicide. One of them having, let's say, several years depression. And when I offered, let's say, support by talk and by discussion, they told that they have already planned with the doctors and with, let's say, this medical treatment. They are having medicines, and I think that one of these young girls, she will get even electrical shocks, and they say that they don't want to mix, or let's say, using their own terms, spoil the treatment what they are doing with something which is not known, and something which somehow, let's say, you may know that the word spirits, let's say Spiritist and Spiritism, it doesn't have very good connotation here in Europe. So we are facing these kind of challenges, and I actually I would like to, let's say, get after this discussion to some ideas what could be done. So this is my experience from Finland.
Thank you. I'll share an experience as well, because for a few years now, I had been thinking, how can I bring more of my Spiritist knowledge into my practice? And I did a hypnotherapy course. I did that because with that qualification, I could give healing. I could do more. I could do the type of work not as I would within the Spiritist center, but I could bring a bit more of my Spiritist self to my practice. And some of the people that I'm treating at the moment, although I keep to the language, to the technique during the hypnotherapy part, then I have much more freedom to do the energy work that I can do with the knowledge of Spiritism in terms of healing and recharging the person's kind of positive energies. And there is receptivity, because the person doesn't see that as a religious spiritual activity. We can talk about those aspects of life without them feeling under pressure to incorporate a religious belief or an ideology that doesn't sit well with them. And because of the receptivity during the within the clinical setting, then they benefit a lot more of that interaction than if I had tried to persuade them to come to a Spiritist center to receive healing.
Good point. Then we have Eugenia and Edward.
So thank you very much, Tania, for your talk. I really appreciate it. Since January this year, a friend of mine from the spiritual house here and we have been working. We kind of created a group that is dedicated to gather information for suicide prevention and how to somehow provide more information about it, so that people talk more about it, so that people know where to look for help. We are not the ones providing the support, but we are the ones sharing the information so that people are more aware of the complications, so that people are not ashamed, and also the most important, that we can get rid of all the taboos and myths around suicide and suicide prevention, prevention, so forth. So I really like it when you mentioned the non-judgmental talk, the non-judgmental way of approaching somebody that is in pain or whatever. And as Spiritist people, I think we can and we should put back the talk that mentions that it's okay to not to mention that life goes on. Your life will go on in another life, or Jesus will help you, because sometimes this kind of talk does not help. As you said at the beginning, it might even create some walls, and instead of helping the person, you will just get pushing the person away from you. So if we are really wanting to provide some support, I would say it's okay that we pull back our Spiritist way of doing things and just focus on the person, focus on the present, focus on hearing what the person has to say about the person's pain. And if the person doesn't want to talk, it's also okay just to be there, and not to mention any religious approach. So I really like it when you said now in the end, I try to put my Spiritist self into practice, but without using the vocabulary, without forcing any religious towards the patient. So yeah, I think in Europe especially, we should go on this way. We can still help people as we do in Brazil, but we need to reformulate, we need to readapt, and then proceed. So I thank you very much for bringing it in such a practical way as you're doing in your work.
That's a very good example. Thanks for bringing it. I think I just want to mention that everybody where I work knows I am a Spiritist. I talk openly about my Spiritist meetings, my Spiritist friends, my Spiritist beliefs. I even talk to my patients about it when it is appropriate, when the spiritual conversation starts, and a lot of the times they ask me, if I believe in anything, especially when they have suffered a bereavement. And I am honest about it. What I don't do is to try to impose my beliefs on them. But I can be a Spiritist and I can be a mental health worker. And also, I think what the example you've given us just now is great, because it kind of fits into what I was saying before about how can we help our community right where we are. And a lot of the times is providing information. In the clinic where I work, we talk about signposting people. Signposting is, I really would like to help you. I don't have the resources to help you. Well, here are organizations that might be able to complement what we are offering you. And then we signpost them to those organizations. So as a spiritist, we don't have to be everything to everyone all the time, but we can join in with other organizations and signpost people to treatment, to counseling, if we cannot offer that. But what we can do that others can't do as well at the moment, perhaps, is to offer that emotional, energetic embrace when we are talking to someone, to transmit that positive healing energy from soul to soul, and do that more efficiently because we know how to do it. We know how those things work, whereas other professionals may not. So they keep that door shut. When as spiritists, we embrace that and we can share that with our friends, our family, our patients, etc.
Thank you.
Any more comments, questions?
I have a question, Pekka. Tania, I can say to you, for example, here in Ireland, a lot of locals, they don't go to the Spirit Center for a, let's say, religion purpose. Okay. And they do not even go to the Spirit Center by curiosity. They go because they watch your way to be with the others. You know, how you treat the others is by example. That's brought more people to the Spirit Center here. And as a consequence, we can say about the philosophy, we discuss the teachings and everything. So I think one of the steps we can do in order to sorry, they decided to play outside. So I think one of the actions we could do is we needed to behave as we talk. We needed to behave as we share in our lives. Because I can give you a wonderful talk here, but I treat my family badly. And they say, oh, you say a lot of good things there, but in real life, you are not that kind of person. So once we treat these differently, even though when you are, for example, you are a Brazilian and a non-Brazilian marriage, if your spouse or partner see you behaving as you teach you when you go and say a lot of good things about the Spiritism, this will change completely the mind. So I would say it's more the actions within ourselves than with them. I don't know if this is my view from here. That's what I take from here. I don't know if you share the same thing.
No, you're absolutely right that if we preach one thing and do something else, then that is very easily noticeable. And Spiritism, and that's why it's the same in Brazil. People are attracted to Spiritism because they feel welcomed, they don't feel judged, they feel they can get some support and kindness from people who treat them as equals. So there is no hierarchy in terms of who is above me, who is below, because within that context, we're all human beings. So absolutely, that is the basic principle that we should all try, at least try to be more like what we study in Spiritism.
Yeah, we have a lot of, we need to get rid of the idea people come to the Spirit Center to see mediumistic manifestations. And like if I want to make a full house here with a lot of Irish people, we just put a medium here and say, hey, we're gonna have this phenomena here. Oh my gosh, I will have thousands of them here. And that's not the purpose.
Yeah, but maybe we can extend this question also to the others in Europe. Is anyone in any one of the mediumistic groups in Europe, are you inviting externals, the community sort of? Like, okay, here you have a chance to talk to your relatives who died recently and so on. Is anything done like that anywhere? No.
Not in the Spiritist movement, but outside,
Okay.
yes.
Not in the Spiritist movement.
Outside,
Okay.
yes. More or less serious.
We have in Finland many of these kind of occasions, and they normally ask some money for that also, but not in Spiritist movement. I would like to ask Tania, taking advantage, and maybe this will be useful for other participants also. We have example now that we have a young girl, actually 2 young girls, and both tried suicide. One of them has been several years suffering depression. I have been praying for them, and but I would like to do something more.
So when you say they're the girls, are they sisters?
Sisters, yes.
Sisters. How old are they?
I think another is something 15 and another is something 18.
Okay.
And I would like to ask that something what was in my mind. They are, let's say, living 500 kilometers from my location, so they are not close. And I was thinking, is it reasonable, let's say, to invite them to, let's say, some kind of discussion and clarify that there is nowadays really reason to think that life continues after death. And I was thinking that maybe I would use in this discussion not only the Spiritist, let's say, teachings, but I'm talking about near-death experience, past life, memories, etc. These kind of studies. Is person? Do you have any experience to say that how it would fit with person, or is it's really individual? Maybe. What's your opinion?
I'm going to ask you some questions. If it becomes a bit too personal, then we'll have this conversation separately.
Okay.
Okay. So how do you know this family?
Father of these girls, he is my friend, good friend.
Okay, so you have a personal relationship with them. That helps, because if you have a personal relationship with the family, I would say probably in this case, I would start with the parents in terms of starting this conversation, because if the parents are resistant to the concept of future life and spirituality, then it will be very difficult for you to pass that on to the girls. The other aspect that needs to be remember that because of there's always spiritual involvement in this kind of cases. So they have a history there. And when praying, we need to pray for the whole spiritual community around them as well, not just the parents, but the discarnates who are there, creating, if you have a group, if you have more people involved, it's better, because then you can generate stronger protective energies and create barriers around them. Like one of the visualizations that I use with spiritists and non-spiritists, if within my mental health practice, is to create like a dome of light or a bubble of light where they can feel comfortable and protected. In terms of having the conversations with the girls, sometimes telling someone who is severely depressed that life continues, in their minds, it's just the pain that's going to continue then. And that can create problems because they can't see that far. They can't see they are in a tunnel and they can't see the exit. So it's just, the tunnel is just longer. But what you can do is to try to bring their attention to more positive things. So create positive conversations. When was the last time that you were happy, that you're truly happy? What was happening? What were you doing? Who else were there with you? To get their minds away from the depression, because the depression creates a vicious cycle of negative thinking, where the mind becomes stuck only in observing and noticing what is painful, and motivation as well becomes a real problem. Does anybody else want to try and add something to it? I don't know if there are any other mental health professionals in the group that want to add something.
Well, I'm at the moment learning this, so maybe I can also add. I mean, one thing I have learned, of course, the medical part needs to be there, right? And when you have people who are in a strong depression, then medicine will help. Antidepressant medicine will help normally to get into a stable mode out of the crisis. That's number one. Number two, normally you have clinics who provide multi-professional support. So it's not only the medical part, it's also the psychotherapist, there is maybe an ergotherapist, there is a sport therapist, and so on, and all this works together sort of. And there's also group talks, and ideally that would be with people and with patients who are in a similar age at least, and that will help. And then the spiritual part you would add as a complement, I think. And as Tania said already, if they are open at least, then it would help to send them energy, but not only you by praying, maybe you together with your community, with your team, maybe 5 or 6 people, you meet together, and then you ask them maybe at a certain point in time to pray, or to at least be calm and meditate, and then you send this energy, and then you synchronize with your group, and then you send this energy together sort of, so you are virtually combined, even though you do it via Zoom, and then there is strong energy being applied. And that ideally you don't only do once, but you do maybe more than once, twice a week, for example, or every week, and so on. And then number 3, I would say, if you have a mediumistic group, then you might also bring this to your mentors, ask them for guidance on the one side, and secondly, ask them also whether it is meaningful to talk to the obsessing spirits. This not always helps, but sometimes it might help. So therefore, you really need the advice of the mentors. So I think there are multiple topics. At least that's the way we would deal with that here in Munich.
I think linking in, because you are a friend of the family, you can't be their therapist. You can be their friend. So they need to have that medical follow-up wherever they are, encourage them to get involved with counseling. And the point Ingo pointed out, I often, during my morning prayers especially, and my evening prayers, if I'm working with someone who's undergoing that kind of problem, I work with lots of people who have tried to commit suicide. Some are actively suicidal, and we have to understand that our ability to help can be limited sometimes, but the least we can do is in our prayers, we can send them some positive healing energies to them, to their family, to their spiritual companions. And that in itself is a lot of help. Olga, did you have your hand up earlier on?
Yes, I just want to add to say that thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting and helpful. And I don't know, I have no experience about this, and I don't know how to help. But I think if what can help stop me when I was in my teenager, it is even when I didn't know about their spiritism, but about I heard about past life experience and so on. And for me, the fear to born again in their ill body was helpful to stop thinking about this suicide. I have kind of suicide dreams or something like that. And when I know about spiritism and what happened after life, that can be the ill bodied, it like helped me to stop that thoughts completely. But before, when I see the people who suffering from illnesses, cannot see, cannot walk, and they was born with disabilities, I thought about that what could happen with them, that they have so much struggles in life. And after I think what I worry about my life, that they live in more bad conditions and they are happy with their life. And I thought, what's wrong with me? Why I'm not happy? Or for them, it's more difficult. And maybe it's like when people go to some places, when they see the people who feels more war than them, they can realize, even if they don't know about spiritism or past life, they can realize that what I worry about, the people who cannot see or cannot move without legs and so on, they have more difficult life than why I worry about that. Maybe my life is not so bad. Just maybe they need to see somebody in needs and to compare their life. But how to do this, I don't know. But it helped me to, when I see people who in more bad condition than me, that time, even when I don't know about spiritism. It's just my experience in my life, what helps me, but it doesn't show that it will help to other people who are thinking about suicide.
Thank you for sharing this very personal experience. Unfortunately, there is a lot, because of its communication, social media is so widespread now, and a lot of young people, they kind of encourage each other to self-harm, and there's a lot of that going on at the moment in almost all over the world. Here in the UK, it's a big problem as well. And as family, friends, or therapists, we can help them with our energies, with our prayers, if they are open, especially the parents, encouraging them to talk, have that conversation with their children, say there, look at other people, let's put our suffering into perspective. It will not last, you will feel better, and remind them of days of when they were happier, because they need to re-experience that to start breaking that vicious cycle of negative thinking and depression. And it might not seem like much, but it works. If we keep going, then they get out of that darkest tunnel and they start seeing a bit more light. And as a spiritist, we can help in that way, having those positive conversations, but absolutely always encouraging them to also become involved with the medical doctors for antidepressants, as well as counseling and group therapy can be very powerful as well.
Yes.
Okay, we have still time to questions and comments.
Can I contribute a little? So,
yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you to Tania. So Tania, listen to her, very interesting. You can build the bridges between two settings, medical setting and spiritual setting. And sometimes, myself, I am not medical doctor, but I'm a community worker, also involved mental health workshops, and also involved with the recovery program, the individuals who come from out of the mental health hospital. And I think what you can, two things can, spirit person can help you, and not using the vocabulary about the words of the Spiritism, but using the meaning and the actions while you are only under spiritual well-being, and also through counseling and through talking therapies. That may be help the person who want to pass the information. And as you say, I agree that what you say about the thought can influence the biological issues and improve. So thought changes. Talking therapy is about the thought change. And under that talking therapy, CBT can help you to use for the spiritual setting. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And that's where we create those links between the two. It seems that they're separate, but they're not really separate. And I think mindfulness has done quite a lot to bring the two together, because most of the exercises and the principles in mindfulness is the same as Spiritism, because it's about focusing the mind on positives, creating positive energies around you, connecting with that with other people as well. There is an exercise in mindfulness that works a lot for people with who are trying to control the impulse to use substances or to take an overdose or to self-harm. And it is the eating of what's the name of the fruit? It's eating a fruit, but it's like, you take it, you look at it, then you put it in your mouth, and basically you're just filling up brain space that the obsessors are using to inject negative thought patterns into our minds. And what we're doing is to fill up that space by being in the physical world, rather than, because a lot of people with mental health disturbances and with suicidal ideation, they're kind of fluctuating between the physical and the spiritual world, and often living mentally, emotionally more in the spiritual side than in the physical side. But when you ground the person, you anchor them into the physical life, and uses the physical senses to block those thought channels, it can be very effective. And we're not less spiritist for using techniques that help us to help people. And I think as spiritists, we embrace new technology, we embrace new knowledge, we embrace new techniques, and this is what to be spiritist is.
Thank you.
Olga, do you want to?
Yes, just tell the quick story about my cousin sister. She has one child committed suicide, but her friend helped her at that time, and she was in hospital, and it was like gone. But after she again had some thoughts about to do this again. And I remember my birthday, I asked my friend come, and my friend cannot see and cannot to walk. She has not possible to walk because of her legs was cut, and just she talk with my cousin sister helped her completely to relook her life. And she said after to me that time my friend helped her so much to change her thinking about life, and after that she stopped thinking about suicide. She said to me that I see the person who has so difficult life, and I see that my problems, my depressions is so less and nothing compared with that person what my friend has with a disability. And she said that she so positive. My cousin sister said to me that my friend, despite of her health problems, so positive, and he gave their positive thinking to her, to my cousin sister, and it helped to her to overcome this thinking about suicide. And now with my cousin sister, everything is fine.
Thank you, Olga, sharing this very good example. Is it Regina? Would you like to say something?
Yes. Hi for everyone, because I was a little bit late. So I want to thank to Tania. I really love to hear about what you were talking about. So our experience in Portugal is a little bit different. It's similar Brazil, but not identical. So since Kardec were open, the spirit centers, sometimes some years were studying hiding because our political government, but after we work normally. So I'm a spiritist from teenager. I'm 53 years old, and I would like to share some experience about this team, because well, here in Portugal everyone is a Catholic, almost. So if we don't, I never been judged about being spiritist. And I have an example. When I was 18 years old, I was taking a theater course. Theater course. And I have a group in the school, and no one knows that I was spiritist. And one day a colleague has a headache, was a terrible headache. And then I said to her, stay here, and I'm going to just close your eyes, because it's something normally for me. So you can have a prayer if you want to. And she said, no, I don't believe that. Okay, just close your eyes and take a breath. And I'm going to
give you some energy.
Some energy. So I made a pass magnetic.
Yeah.
A magnetic pass, you know. And after some seconds after, it was very quickly, I just had my prayer and those that like this. And she opened her eyes. Oh, it passed away. So wonderful, incredible. And she asked me what I have done. And I explained to them what I've learned in a spirit center. And that begins to talk about spiritists normally. And I have many examples of this at school. Friends ask me about things like drugs or suicide. Someone talks about suicide. I often the Spiritist book, for example, for many young people, and we talk normally about those things. So my reality is a little bit different, because I have that lucky, if I can say it, When I was younger, I was working in a village where there was no Spiritist center. But early, I liked to be a volunteer. So usually I made it in some organizations. And in that village, there was no Spiritist center. I would like to go to be a volunteer. So there was just a Catholic organization over there. And the Catholic Church as a program, not a program, Conference Vicentina, St. Paul, I don't know the name in English, and just visit
people.
They visit people at the hospitals, you know, and going to visit illness people, poor people. And so I was spirits, and I asked them to be with them and make the same work, being a volunteer in a Catholic organization. I don't mind, because I think it's an opportunity to be an example. So sometimes, instead of talking about spiritists, I talk about soul, because they understand what is a soul. And there are people talking about they have something strange, they hear spiritists, they hear those things that they think is diabolical things. And I have opportunity to explain them with naturally form, explain it. And I think if we are in some village or in a country where there is no Spiritist centers, and people are a little bit different, because I have friends in Switzerland and they told me that it's very difficult to explain God for Switzerland people. For example, they told me there are many difficulties, and in Brazil it's really simple to do that, like Tania said. So we just can put the things with naturally, you know, just take some, how do you say, usar outras ferramentas.
No, yeah, we need to use
another tools.
Another tools.
I'm sorry, my English is not very good. I understand you very well, but I don't have well, usually I don't speak in English, and it's...
So what I think Regina is trying to say is that we don't need at the first time to speak, to tell people that we are spiritists. We believe we can use another way to get them talking, well, using their own beliefs, all right, to get at the bottom of the question, because that's what it is. In a few years ago, not many, maybe 10, 15, it was very complicated in Portugal to talk openly about Spiritism, because people, they just put that as a way, and they don't want to listen about anything. So to get them to see the ways that we see, the way that we see the same thing, we can talk going, we can go in another way, just to get the bottom of the question. Well, we don't need to talk about spirits. We just need to tell them something is going to happen after that. Something, because it's complicated to believe that what we have is just this. I worked in London, in UK, for 3 years as a care support assistant with mental health problems. And the last house where I worked, they had it's end of life in disabled people, okay, with mental health, physical problems, and it was very, very complicated. But now imagine talking about Spiritism with people that most of them, they didn't understand most of the things, but the ones that understands, it's complicated to get there with people with 60, 70 years old, and just tell them that no, the soul is gonna die, or the body is gonna die, and you're gonna go to the other side. No, for them it's very complicated. And UK, I believe some of you lives in UK. They are not so open to this kind of things. Yeah, Elsa, I think I'm talking correctly. Yeah. Well, I had two ladies. They were in the end of their lives, and I felt something, and I just thought about their guides. So the spirits that because they also, even if they are not, they don't believe in Spiritism, they for sure they have at least one guide each one. And I thought about them, whoever they were, and I said, please help me, because they are in the end. And I can see that they were suffering because of the mental health and cancer problems, which was very bad. And so maybe 1 or 2 days before they pass away, I did this, and I was talking with them, and I said, please, I don't remember their names, believe in one thing, what you're gonna have after is gonna be much better than what you're having now. So you need to believe that someone is gonna be waiting for you to help you in the other side. And what I saw, it was a very big smile, and it was, if the pain just disappeared, and something came to their minds, and I don't know if they felt something. I believe, because, well, I asked for that, yeah. And what I'm trying to say is, we can do, because charity is free. Charity is not only for us that believe in Spiritism, but it's for everybody. And it's better because we know the meaning, the real meaning of charity. And that's what we need to do, to practice charity, whatever the way we can find to do it. If we can explain people in what we believe, it's much better, because when they get there, they will know, they will remember. They told me. Okay, and that's what I think.
Just for ending, to respond to Ingo Meyer, he asks about having some communications in our medium sessions.
Yeah.
Yes, we have, because we have in our spirit centers is the biggest about Portugal, I think,
yeah.
and Viseu. So we have at the same time five rooms of working with 3 mediums and 3 dialoguers, and one who give the orientation of the group. So there are many people. We work in different groups, Monday, on Wednesday, and Friday. So 3 days a week, and 3 and 5 groups. So you can see each day there are many people working. So in our group, sometimes there are our friends, and without asking, they talk about. So yesterday, I have a communication of a friend. He listened to my thoughts, and he went to say that my grandfather is already here, and he told me because, well, I think I deserve to know. I don't know. And he told me about him. So, but I have many notices. For example, from his father, he did.
Yeah, my father passed away in May. I don't know if you heard about him, if you knew him. He was president of Portuguese Federation, Arnaldo Costeira, and he passed away in May, victim of cancer also. And we had some notices that some people were saying that, oh, he talked about in our group, he talked through a medium, and he said like this and that. No, he didn't talk. We had a communication of him, not from him, but from someone who's near him, maybe my mother, because my mother also passed away almost 40 years ago. So saying that, don't believe that he will come. Don't believe it, because he's resting, he's knowing the new, he's adapting at the new reality. And one day you will for sure know if it's him or not. So we have some work with groups here in Viseu, which is very, very good. We help a lot of people that comes. And let me just say that most of them, they come and they don't believe in Spiritism. We hear a lot of people saying that most of the times they go to the last, or a medic, a doctor, or even the church. Sometimes they say, no, we don't know what we have. So if you want to find out, please go there, because maybe they have something to tell you. And that's what happens here in Viseu.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I can see that our time has been going quite quickly. We try to keep, let's say, 1 hour and a half session for this gathering. I would like to say that there is one comment what we received in chat, and there was told that in ethics of healing requires permission to provide specific help, but sending love and light is always okay to send regardless of permission. So it's good to share and get these ideas or understanding shared. And I also have that kind of understanding that I can pray for another person if even he is not asking that. That's also my understanding. We have to finalize our meeting, but if there is somebody here who would like to say something, I will let's hear his or her comment. And I can see that we had some new participants here, so I would like to say welcome for everybody who is here now first time. We hope to see you next time. Also, we haven't defined not yet what will be the next month topic. We have to make meeting with steering group and define that. And I think we have to do that meeting after 1 or 2 weeks. We have to send emails and propose times, and we will do that. And I think that now it's time to thank you, Tania, for your comments and your, let's say, presentation of this topic. And we all have been also received good information and learning from other locations. So thank you for all who has been participating. we would like to finalize this meeting with a prayer. And I would like to ask if we have some volunteer to finalize this meeting. Yes, please, Karen. Thank you. Karen, we can't hear you.